Hi, you're watching Floyd Steinberg's YouTube channel. This is the 203 Systems Mystrix, an open source launchpad-like controller. Open source meaning that you can develop your own application which will run right on this controller. So if you think that's interesting, please join me in this video. Here we go. So what's in the box? There are some stickers there and the Mystrix pad itself and a USB Type-C cable and some merch as well. When I first opened this box, some loose magnets rattled around inside, which originally were meant to sit under the device, so you can attach it to metal surfaces. The glue which held them in place had run dry, so that was an easy fix by reapplying some glue and then putting that rubber mat on top of it. 203 Systems told me that there are some optimizations in progress, and I guess this will and should be one thing to improve upon. The Mystrix pad has 64 velocity sensitive pads which also transmit polyphonic aftertouch. Besides the MIDI over USB option, it also has built-in Bluetooth transmitters. Connecting the pad to a USB device powers it up, and it shows up as a MIDI device immediately, ready for use. Okay, so after turning on the Mystrix, you will face this screen, and up here we have got some apps, because this is an open source controller. You can install your own apps, and here you can also develop your own apps. We'll take a look at that later. If you're just beginning using this pad, you'll be lost. So there's one helpful feature here: just hold down your finger on one of those pads, and then an explanation will scroll across this matrix here. For example, here we've got the performance app, here we've got the notes app, which will let you play notes on the pads, and there are a couple of other apps here as well. For example, there's a companion app and there's a light show as well. Maybe I'll take a look at those, but I think I'll start with the note app because that's the one you're going to use most. Just press this and then we're in the notes app, and now you can just play some things here. And by the way, sound is coming from a Yamaha MU2000 from the AWM engine here. Let's play some notes. Yeah, playing is easy enough, but I find myself pressing way too hard all the time because I'm not used to playing with a pad controller, so excuse my amateurish behavior here. As you probably can see, in the middle there's a black button, and if you press this you get the app settings, and there are a couple of things you can do here. On the left there's the octave selector. Remember, we're playing this note, and now let's go down and play that note again. By the way, the darker pads here symbolize the beginning of an octave. There's also a possibility to do a keyboard split, as you have seen in the beginning of this video, and you can do that with this button here. So if you press it once, we have a vertical keyboard split. On the right side, we have a virtual analog lead sound. If you press this button again here on the settings, then we'll have a horizontal split. With these buttons, you can switch between the setup of the left side and the setup of the right side. Using these buttons in the middle will adjust the brightness of the pads. And now we go back to normal. Got some settings buttons here on the right side. We can set up the notepad colors here. Here we have color selector, and let's go with, for example, green and yellow. Now if you go back, we've got green and yellow for the right side. Okay, let's continue. We've got the scale selector here, which is nice to have. Push this button here. Here's a depiction of a piano keyboard. So we've got the white keys here and the black keys here, and now you can select your scales, and we're moving from a pentatonic scale here to a full chromatic octave here. here, and there should be something you can use within your music. For example, I used this setting for my jam in the beginning of the video, so we've got the white keys here, including A sharp. Right, next one. Yeah, you can enforce the scale. Let's take a look at the consequences here. So not enforcing the scale will leave blank pads that you can't play. If you like that because the root notes are on the left side, that's a thing you can use, but you're wasting precious keys there. If you turn it on, the root notes will be all over the place, so to speak. Okay, yellow button. Yeah, that's the overlap. Let's turn off the keyboard split here so we can see this better. If you choose a certain scale, then you'll always have a certain overlap of notes. Let's choose the overlap. At the moment we have no overlap. Let's turn this to 2, for example, and go back. I can see certain notes are overlapping now. You can use this to arrange the root notes in a certain way so you can find your way around here more easily. The last button here is the MIDI channel. At the moment we're working on the blue side of the keyboard split. I've set this to channel 2, but you can choose channel 1 to 16 here, but we'll leave it at 2. Here you can turn off velocity sensitivity, which is useful if you don't want to hit the keyboard too hard. So if I turn it on, some sounds are barely audible. So if I turn it off, they will always play at full volume. And the last button is System Settings. And if you press this, you can set up a lot of system-wide options for the Mystrix. So for example, you can set the device ID. You can use these buttons here to rotate the screen, so you can play it from any direction. Yeah, and that's the Note app, arguably the most important app on the Mystrix, because that's what you're going to use every day if you play this. But there are other apps, and I will take a look at those briefly now.
The Performance app lets you play pre-made light and sound sequences. For this, you need an external player, for example the Amethyst player, and a pre-rendered sequence, which can be found all over the internet. There's also an editor named Unitor, which lets you create your own sequences. I'll link those in this video's description.
Here's a demonstration of the polyphonic aftertouch on this pad. I'm using Surge XT in Reaper to show you this, and setting it up is quite easy here. There's a Poly AT button, just press that, and then you can see some additional sliders appear, which let you set the constraints you want certain parameters to move in. For example here, filter cutoff frequency, which was the most obvious choice. Polyphonic aftertouch means that every note you play can be controlled individually, in this case the filter cutoff frequency. And here's how that sounds. But as I said, this is an open source project, so let's install a development environment and compile the operating system for this pad next. 203 Industries has a wiki with instructions on how to do this on the Windows command line, which I'll link in this video's description. Here I show you how to do the same thing from within Visual Studio Code. In Visual Studio Code, click on the extension icon, search for ESP-IDF and then install it. Then click on Express Setup, check Show ESP-IDF tags and click Continue. Wait for the extension to be configured, then download Git for Windows and install it. And once that's done, you can then clone the Mystrix OS using the lines on screen right now. Then, back in Visual Studio Code, click Import Project and choose the Mystrix OS folder you just cloned. Then name your project and open a terminal within Visual Studio Code. And first you need to run the export batch script found in the ESP-IDF installation folder seen on screen right now. This will add all the library paths to your system. Then type make device equals Mystrix build and press enter. This will compile the project. You can now connect the Mystrix pad to your computer while holding down the black button in the middle, which will put it into firmware update mode. You can then type make device equals Mystrix UF2 upload to install the firmware. Within the Mystrix OS project folder, you can find the application source codes as well. There's an example app that you can add to your Mystrix pad by uncommenting the line in the header file. After recompiling and re-uploading the firmware, the example app will now show up on the Mystrix. We'll take a look at the code in the next video.
Conclusion. The Mystrix Pro is a solidly built MIDI pad controller. It's more expensive than the Launchpad Mini, for example, but you also get Bluetooth MIDI and polyphonic aftertouch here. And on top of that, complete hardware and firmware access, so you could come up with your own apps like sequencers and arpeggiators if you wanted to. I encountered some hanging notes while shooting this video, especially when pushing the menu button while playing notes. 2 or 3 systems said they're still working on the operating system, as they are completing the online documentation, which looks a little desolate and barren at the moment. But I'll keep you updated, so hit that like and subscribe button now.
And that's it for today. The 203 Systems Mystrix open source pad controller. So if you think this was an interesting YouTube video, please do the YouTube thing. As always, thanks for watching and see you again very soon. Bye bye.